What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. I'm going to tell you the 22 teams that have a shot to make the college football playoff in 2022. We did this video last year, and I only named 13 teams, so I really narrowed it down, tried to get the teams that actually had a shot, and we missed on Michigan. Michigan was not on the video last year, of course, coming off of a terrible year. Didn't think that even if they did turn it around, they were going to get past Ohio State and win the Big Ten like they did. It was a big surprise to me last season. It's a big surprise to almost everyone. And I missed on Michigan. But in that video, we did have Alabama, we did have Georgia, and we did have Cincinnati. A lot of people thought that Cincinnati had no chance last year. I said many times that if Cincinnati won the table with their schedule, they were going to have a really good chance to make it to the college football playoff. They did do that. And we'll see if maybe we have a group of 5 team that could be a contender this year. And we're going to go and I'm going to go through the Power 5 conferences and the independents. And if there are any other conferences, we'll do those. And I'll tell you the top contenders from each conference. And then I'll give you kind of the dark horse picks. I think we have 7 teams that are really top contenders that have the best chance. It doesn't necessarily mean that I think that these 7 teams are the best 7 teams. It's simply that I think they have the best shot to make the playoff based off of them being really good teams and then also kind of their path to get to the playoff. And I'll talk about, try to quickly go through this and kind of give some paths for these teams that maybe you think don't have a chance. So let's start with the ACC. Your top contender in the ACC, I think, is Clemson. I think this is really the only team that I would put in that category as being a top contender. When you look at what this team has coming back on the defensive side of the ball, if they can make some improvements on offense and if they can get healthy, they have a really decent chance of running the table and going undefeated. The ACC, it's going to be better this year, but there aren't multiple top 5, top 10 teams to where Clemson, if they reach their full potential, they should clearly be better than everyone else in the ACC. And they'll have a good chance to run the table. Even if they lose one game and they win the conference, potentially they could get in. Let's say they lose to Notre Dame and then they win out and win the ACC championship. They'll have a good chance to get in there. So I think that there is a good path for Clemson. It's going to be going undefeated or maybe getting in with one loss. To me, that's the only top contender. We do have some dark horses from the ACC, which we'll get to in just a minute. But let's go to the SEC now. Alabama and Georgia are your top contenders. I don't even really need to talk about Alabama. We all know why they are here. They're here every year. They're one of the most talented teams every year. They've got maybe the best coach, probably. I guess we can go ahead and say it. He is the best coach in college football. They've reloaded. They've used the transfer portal this year. It's like it's not even fair anymore. Georgia didn't really add anything in the transfer portal. Alabama did. That's why I do think Alabama has a better chance than Georgia. But you look at Georgia's schedule. Oregon in the non-conference, as long as they get past that game, they're going to be more talented than everyone else in the SEC East. If they go undefeated in the regular season and then they lose to Alabama, it's not really going to matter. Just like last year, they'll still get in the playoff more than likely unless we have like a bunch of undefeated teams or something. But Georgia definitely has a path. Alabama, if they win the SEC or lose a game, I think they would be in with one loss regardless of what happens just because their schedule is pretty tricky this year. Some tough road games in there. They're going to have one of the tougher schedules that they've had in a while. And so I think that Alabama, they are in really good shape if they can get through the season with one loss or going undefeated. How about in the Big Ten? I think Ohio State and Michigan are here. Everyone's talking about Ohio State. I think they're the favorites in the Big Ten. There is something good for Michigan, but at the same time it could be bad, and it's the schedule. The schedule sets up for them to where they could go 11-1, lose to Ohio State. That would be their only loss. Let's say Ohio State goes undefeated, they win the Big Ten, whatever. Michigan would just have that one loss to a playoff team on the road. That's going to look great, and they'll have a chance to get in the playoff. But their schedule is easier, so that might actually cost them. They don't have anyone tough in the non-conference. A really favorable schedule for Michigan this year. So it's hard to say what would happen, but I do think there is a path there for Michigan losing to Ohio State. And let's face it, this team beat Ohio State last year. They could do it again. And if they win the Big Ten with one loss or going undefeated, they will be in the college football playoff. How about in the Pac-12? I think Utah is your top contender out here. A very manageable schedule. They get USC at home. If they can beat Florida on the road, I think they're going to be in really good shape. Florida's actually favored. Last I looked, it's actually favored in that game, which is a bit of a surprise. It is on the road, though, and it's early in the year. But if Utah can win that game, they're going to have a great chance of being a playoff contender this upcoming season. A lot coming back off of a really good team last year. Watch out for Utah. I think they are a top contender in the Pac-12, a top playoff contender out of the Pac-12. And then Notre Dame, I think an independent team, also a top contender. Notre Dame's tough for me. They're tough every year to figure out what they're going to be, because they're not real flashy. You know, they're not, the offense is just not doing things like what Alabama's doing, what Ohio State's doing, and the defense is not quite to the level of Georgia, but still they're a really solid team. And I think they have a chance to go 11-1 or potentially even go undefeated. And if they do that, they're going to be in a position to be in that discussion for the college football playoff. Marcus Freeman's first year, how will that work out? I think Notre Dame has the talent to be a top contender. It could, if everything falls their way, this team could be in the college football playoff. I don't have any group of 5 teams in here. I was looking at UCF. They play a couple of Power 5 teams, I think, but it's like Georgia Tech, and I can't remember the other team. I just don't think their resume would be there for them like Cincinnati had last year. So I don't see any group of 5 teams potentially having a resume good enough. And so we will not discuss any of those teams. Now let's go to the dark horses. Starting with the ACC, NC State, Wake Forest, Miami, and Pittsburgh. I think these teams all have a chance if they can win the ACC with 1 loss or potentially going undefeated. I think Miami, talent-wise, is probably the best of these 4 teams. Pittsburgh, though, going to be really solid on defense, going to be able to run the ball. I think Keaton Slovis will come in and do a nice job for them at quarterback. So you look at the 2 teams out of the Coastal, I think they both have a chance to get in this discussion. And then Wake Forest or NC State, can one of them take down Clemson in that division if they can win the conference? Which, again, if Clemson struggles like they did last year, that division's up for grabs. Clemson didn't win it last season. So, yes, you could see Wake Forest or NC State potentially emerging from that division. Are these top contenders? No. But, yes, I do think they are dark horses coming out of the ACC. Moving on to the Big 12. And we didn't have any top contenders out of the Big 12 because I think there's just too much parity in this conference. I don't see a team really rising above everyone else and going 11-1 or going 12-0. Perhaps if things fall just right, a 2-loss Big 12 champ could get in the discussion, but it's a lot. It's a lot to ask. But I think these are your 3 teams that have a chance: Baylor, Texas, and Oklahoma. Baylor, we saw what they did last year. A lot coming back on defense. I think Baylor's going to be a really good team. Texas will have the weapons on offense. Can it come together for them on the defensive side of the ball? That'll be the question. Oklahoma, this team lost a lot of players to the transfer portal, but they bring in some players as well. And Brent Venables, we'll see how he does in his first year. If we can get a Brent Venables type defense in year 1 with the weapons they have coming back on offense, Oklahoma, I think, has the most potential to be in that top contender category out of these 3 teams. But for now, I'm going to put them all in the dark horse category just because I think this conference is going to be really tough. I think TCU is going to be a good team. I think Kansas State's going to be a good team. Oklahoma State, the team that's missing here that you're probably wondering about. I have nothing against Oklahoma State. I'm sure I'm going to get called an Oklahoma State hater. But when I look at their roster and everything that they lost and what they have coming back, I just don't see it. I don't see this team being a 10-win team again this year. Maybe I'm wrong, but again, I just don't see that. You look at their secondary. I mean, they lost almost everyone out of the secondary. I'm very concerned there. Running back, who will emerge at that spot? For Oklahoma State, I think they're just outside of this category. It would take a lot, in my opinion, for Oklahoma State to get into the college football playoff discussion. How about in the Big 10? I think Michigan State's a dark horse. If they can go 11-1, maybe they don't have to go to the Big 10 championship game. I don't know if this team is going to be good enough to win the Big 10 to get through Michigan and Ohio State plus the games on their schedule. But I think they're a dark horse. They're one of those teams that could sneak in there at 11-1 and possibly get in if everything goes the right way. You're going to see no Big 10 West teams here. It's just like with the Big 12. I think those teams will just beat up on each other. There's so much parity in that division. I think you've got 5 teams with a legitimate chance to win that division with Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue, and Nebraska. With all those teams playing each other, of course, I don't think you're going to see a team come out of that division with just one loss potentially. And I really have a hard time seeing one of those teams winning the actual Big Ten championship as well. Maybe a New Year's Six bowl for one of those teams, but I'm just not seeing them getting into the college football playoff. And then in the SEC, we got 4 dark horses here: Texas A&M, Ole Miss, LSU, and Arkansas. I think the script is really the same for all 4 teams. Go 11-1 and lose to Alabama in a somewhat close game. If you can do that, you're going to be in the conversation. I just don't see any of these teams going through Alabama, winning the West, and then probably beating Georgia, or probably meeting Georgia and beating them in the SEC championship. I think it's just too much to ask. So I think the path for these 4 teams is all, like I just said, 11-1, lose to Alabama, hopefully in a close game, get some nice wins on the resume. I think the resume would be good enough for all 4 of these teams if they were able to do that and get to 11-1, to where we could potentially see a second SEC team, or even a third SEC team if Georgia and Bama both get in. Who knows? That's something we'll probably be talking about down the road. Going to the Pac-12, I think USC and Oregon, 2 wild card teams here. They've got talent. They got new coaches. USC could potentially, especially with Jordan Addison now added, could maybe be added to that top contender list. And also the fact that the Pac-12 did away with the conference championship rules, where you have to, there's no divisions really when you're looking at the conference championship game. So USC, if they lose to Utah on the road, they will have a chance to avenge that loss potentially if they win the rest of their games in the Pac-12 championship. And it's a manageable schedule. So USC is actually maybe on the verge of being a top contender. They've got so many weapons on offense. If Caleb Williams stays healthy for them, and that's losing him would be huge, but if he stays healthy, that offense should be really good. Offensive line, maybe a bit of a concern, but man, they are loaded at the skill positions. Defense is absolutely a concern, but if the defense plays, to a B level, this team does have a real shot to make the playoff. And with Oregon, the talent's there on defense. It's kind of opposite. They need the skill position players to step up. I think Bo Nix is going to play really well for them. So I think both of these teams are in this discussion. Everything's going to have to go their way. Oregon, they've got Georgia on the schedule, which makes it really tough. If they lose that game, they really have no room for error the rest of the season. That could ultimately be what keeps them out. But I think they will be in this conversation potentially at the end of the year. And then one more dark horse, and that's BYU. I think BYU is a dark horse. They have a very challenging schedule, but it's not a schedule that I think they can't overcome. If they can get to 12-0, run the table, they're going to be in the playoff with their schedule. 11-1, and maybe they're in the conversation. They're kind of in that same boat as Notre Dame. That'll be interesting to watch. This team has a ton of production coming back, and look for them to possibly be in this conversation at the end of the year. 2 losses, though. I think they're done with no conference championship game. I don't really see BYU or Notre Dame getting in with 2 losses. If we see a 2-loss team, it's going to be a conference champion, and they're probably going to need some help as well. So those are the 22 teams that I think have a chance to make the college football playoff. We got the 7 top contenders, and then the 15 teams that I think are dark horses. Who do you think out there that I did not put in this video is a dark horse, a contender for the college football playoff, a team that might can make it in? Because I think right now, I'm going to say that if the team didn't make this video, they have no chance of making the college football playoff. Obviously, we were wrong last year with Michigan. We'll see how it plays out this year, but I would love to know your thoughts again. Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.